Hi there. If you see me glancing down, I just wrote down some notes because I have a little bit of some trouble keeping a train of thought when I'm talking. So I just wrote down some notes so I can keep myself on track. But after reading chapter 2, I found that the dietary guidelines plan, specifically how Americans have trouble following this dietary plan, was very interesting. Even more specifically, how Americans lack in using it. Because as an American myself, it just made me question some things as I read. Americans, at least many Americans, do not follow the daily intake recommendations for fruits, vegetables, and dairy, meaning they do not eat basically enough fruits, vegetables, like dairy products, but they do have their daily intake of proteins and grains. However, it's not like the recommended proteins and grains that the dietary guideline plan would recommend. For example, let's say like an American had a cheeseburger and that's like the protein, but the dietary guideline plan would probably recommend like some chicken or like maybe like steak, or so I'm a vegetarian, but like you get the point. Like they're choosing options that aren't recommended by this plan. So like in theory they're getting their daily protein, but like how healthy is that protein actually for their body, if that makes sense. I can definitively say though that Americans need to improve their eating habits. One thing that did stick out to me throughout the reading was that potatoes were one of the most, I think it was the most eaten vegetables either in the United States or worldwide, but I think it was the United States. But that doesn't matter. But why is that, you might say? Like, why is potatoes the most eaten, let's just say, in the United States? It's because of our favorite greasy, salty snack, which is French fries. So you, at first, could be like, okay, well, potatoes aren't that bad, but when you're frying them in grease, putting a bunch of sodium on them, that's just not good for you. And especially the higher portions we have in the United States, like, that's just, it's very bad for you. So one question I think that kind of arose from this for me is like, why do we have such poor eating habits? Because as an American myself, I feel like I grew up throughout elementary school, middle school, and even high school. Even now, like in college, I'm surrounded by like My Plate, like healthy eating habits and everything. And I feel like, especially My Plate when you're younger, is like thrown at you, and it's very much like when you're getting food in the cafeteria at lunch, you need a vegetable and a fruit and a protein and a grain, and like you get your carton of milk as your dairy. So it just made me kind of question how we can go from like having all of these things kind of like shoved at us from when we're younger and like having to follow that kind of plan to becoming adults and not following that plan at all.